Hey y'all, it's your girl Erin, and today I wanted to talk about ContraPoints. You may know that I've been someone who has been critical of ContraPoints in the past. About 7 months ago I made a video that was like 4.5 hours long. I'll put a link to it in the description along with some of the other videos I've made about gender. Obviously I don't expect everyone to go and watch 4.5 hours. Pretty much just watch the first 20 minutes to get my thoughts and then just jump to any random point in the longer video and you'll just get a random take of me commenting on her video, and pretty much half of the stuff I comment is pointing out problems. So then recently some of the stuff ContraPoints said caused a lot of harm. I think it's okay, and I think everyone has a right, if they are harmed, to speak against it. And so they criticized her for saying those things. And so then she closed her Twitter account. I've seen a lot of people saying stuff like that this was bad, that we just like the right with all this infighting. I've seen people saying things like you should be ashamed of yourself for doing this to ContraPoints and that kind of thing. So the people that have been bringing up all these criticisms are now sort of coming a little bit under fire from some other people. And I actually wanted to kind of call out the bigger bread tubers, because we really can't afford to allow people who aren't willing to keep fighting to set the tone of our community. And so it's up to those who have the numbers, who do get taken seriously, to speak out and to guide the discourse in a way that is healthy. And I think trying to criticize the people that we're criticizing ContraPoints, going after them, is kind of victim blaming. And I think if the people with numbers and stuff do that, then they are basically going to be siding with her. And this, in effect, is like a social capital bourgeoisie, where, you know, there's an interest in those who do have a lot of social capital in maintaining the social capital of each other. And so they don't really want to see one of their number be exposed to too much accountability, because then they might be exposed to accountability too. And the thing is, if you are someone who is held to account, then you do risk losing social capital. That's the beauty of community, is like, if you had community, then that accountability can happen in the community through call-ins. But that means like friendship and stuff, right? So if there is a community that ContraPoints is in, it didn't do its job and it didn't do the call-in. And that's why so many people had to do call-outs. And what I try to do, and what I encourage other people to do when they give criticism, is to be constructive. And so that's why I took the time to go through her videos and as well show that there's pattern. It's not like just one video was like that, and address the individual things and the larger points. Think about what's being expressed and why people are willing to spend so much time explaining it to you. Just by not taking good faith constructive criticism seriously, you start to build up a thing that will eventually need to be called out. So that's okay, like, these things happen. Nobody's perfect, and sometimes one of those misconceptions, or you might not even have the correct information, is going to lead to those kinds of thought processes that are harmful and are going to later on need to be called out. And so you need to have the ability to be open to criticism, so that when that happens, you are able to cut that off. And when you are able to cut off that harm that you would have been doing, you are working together with everyone around you to be someone who doesn't harm others. And that's what real social justice looks like. And that's why in the space of social justice you have to be open to criticism. And one of the other reasons why you need community and you need accountability is because when you talk about politics and social justice in particular, you are talking to people's pain. Think of how a preacher in church might speak to the pain of their congregation, right? When you talk about politics, you're talking about the things in people's lives that have really caused them a lot of hurt and trauma, things that they are struggling with daily, right? They're things that are life and death, things that cost people's lives all the time. And so when you talk about that, especially when you talk about getting justice for those things, that's going to cause people who are hurting to be attracted to you. And then if you don't have that community and accountability, but there's this thought pattern that is unhealthy or is harmful to others, and it starts to express itself and starts to cause harm, that's going to harm the people who are following you, your audience, who are already people who are hurting. When someone is talking about social justice issues and is doing it in a way that is at least aesthetically trying to be on the side of the marginalized people, then that extra responsibility comes in where you are able to do real damage to people. And so that's why the things you say need to be things that have, if not going to be correct the first time you say it, or the second, or the third, will at least be correct when you get some criticism and have taken it seriously and adjust. And so we need community, we need transparency, and people telling me that it's a bad thing that people are calling out problematic behavior. And the thing is, this is in some ways, I think, a moment where people who are gender non-conforming and people who don't get treated by society the way they feel they should regarding their gender or sexuality, this is a moment for them where they kind of should be feeling a little bit relieved. If someone is causing a bunch of harm and gets called out, then they don't get a free pass if calling them out has some seriously strong effect on them. And so for months and years, people have been calling out Contrapoints, and this is now a time where we can at least see with our own eyes that the message has been heard, because she's been tripling and doubling down on things and saying stuff that is just like demonstrably false. What I think has been the most problematic ideas she's been promoting. The first one would be that you need to transition or assimilate or fit into the gender binary if you expect people to respect your gender identity. And the second thing is that she's been implying that gender can be binary. And that's just completely false. It is impossible for gender to be binary. Binary has a very specific meaning. Binary has, for hundreds and thousands of years, been used in maths, science. It's still used today by engineers, by scientists and computer people, and binary has a very specific meaning. Binary means one of two options. So I've seen people say things like, if you identify outside of the binary, that is a completely nonsensical expression. If there is anything outside of the binary, then it's not a binary. If you have three options, it's called a trinary, and they've got all those fancy names for the more options you get. So you can't have binary plus another option and then still call that a binary, because you're just implying for some reason that there's two options there. So when people talk about gender being binary, to me, that is honestly the real oppressive vector. To me, it doesn't really matter as much what the doctors assigned to me. For me, what's more helpful is to talk about whether you are operating under the assumption that gender is binary or not. So if the doctors accepted the science that says that gender can't be binary, that sex isn't binary, that your biology does not lead to your gender, that gender is psychological. It's something that develops over time with your personality, or in some people, they just don't develop gender. It's just not something they care about. And your biology is made up of complex gene networks. Everyone is a mosaic of various different genetic expressions, and nobody is really 100% physically on one end or another end of a spectrum. We are just complicated webs of genes. If you think of like a Rubik's Cube and you just spin it up until it's completely random, and then someone else takes one and they do a completely random spin, and you look at the two different cubes, that would be basically how random genetics basically. So there's many different gene networks, and so this is like lots of genes work together, and once they've worked together, they produce a specific expression. But there are other genes that work together that also produce their own expression, and those two together can also interact each other and change each other's expression. And so you end up just being a completely unique person. And that's awesome, I think. And it's really doesn't make sense to call that binary. That would be like saying that, blue and yellow are the binary parts of a rainbow. It doesn't make sense. And so if the doctor had accepted that and known that science and not had transphobic prejudices preventing them from accepting that science that's been around for decades, they would then stop assigning gender to children, because they would know that it is medically unethical to do so. They would know that you could only even attempt to diagnose someone's gender once they're old enough to have one and to understand what it is and to express it. Now, I don't know, maybe that'll be as young as 2 or 3, or maybe it'll be 5 or 6, or maybe never. Who cares? It should be up to the person to decide. But that would be the scientific and medical way of doing things. And so if we got the science to be adopted by our classrooms, our doctors, news, our politicians, and our media producers, our musicians, and all of that, everybody, if they understood the science, they would stop pushing the idea that gender is binary, because they would know that it doesn't make sense to say that. And so they wouldn't want to keep talking in ways that don't make sense. And so that is really what is going to change the lives of people who are currently marginalized and oppressed based on gender. Way more than if all you did was fix gender markers and then not actually change the perception of gender away from it being tied to biology, or that there being some kind of two predominant options. If you're a trans man or a trans woman, you're already fully a man or fully a woman without calling it binary. Calling it binary is just saying it's one of the two options for society. It's putting yourself it's like assimilating yourself into cis privilege, and it's harmful to people that can't do that, and it's harmful to people that don't want to do that. What I would be hoping we can achieve by the calling out of Contrapoints is to point her towards the science, point her towards the fact that gender can't be binary, allow her to internalize that. It might take time, we can be easy on her, and then, hopefully she can start to adjust her language and the things she's thinking and saying, so that she's more accepting of people who aren't cisnormative, because she'll understand that cisnormativity is as unscientific as claiming the earth is flat, and it's a complete fabrication and myth. People who have platforms, people who have social capital, they need to get on board with the people who were hurt. They need to be there for healing, and the way you do that isn't by attacking the ones calling out, isn't by claiming that it's infighting and all that. The way you do that is by going and looking at the criticism yourself, understanding it yourself, the language about binary, that identifying your gender as being binary is perpetuating a harmful idea, and it's putting out into society the notion that there's a normativity that is okay, and that the other people are just this weird extra thing happening on the side, and we don't really need to change anything. We just need to let them do their thing in peace. No, we need to change everything. We need to stop assigning kids gender at birth, but not just because of the harm it does to them when you get it wrong, but rather because we understand that getting it right is always going to be up to random luck and is actually completely pseudoscience. So if you do have a platform and you do have social capital, then you should be lifting up the voices and the people and the channels that were marginalized and silenced by Contrapoints' presence, because when she's there and she's getting called out but no one's taking it seriously, like at what point are we actually going to start putting into practice the things we say we value? And part of that is you stepping up to the plate and you saying, look, I'm going to actually start building community. I'm going to structure the spaces around me non-hierarchy. I'm going to be open to transparency. I'm going to take criticism. Are you going to actually get on the side of the people who are hurting? Or are you going to get on the side of the social capital bourgeoisie and hope that by doing so they will further want to work with you and you'll get some of that sweet exposure? Like, there's people who aren't able to get the kind of growth you get. There's people who are marginalized on multiple vectors, like especially if you're autistic and trans, then you are probably going to be feeling a lot more pain than people who are just autistic or just trans. And if you're a person of color, then even more so. And when people who have multiple marginalizations are trying to explain things, I think it's really important that people actually listen to it and that you expand your ideology, expand your worldview, expand your politics so that it includes those people and continue to be inclusive. And that, I think, is how we actually achieve any real progress, through things that are open, transparent, accountable, through inclusivity and not exclusivity, through community, through friends calling you in so that you don't keep hurting people who are then going to start calling you out because they want that harm to stop. And the reason why it harms people so much when Contrapoint says problematic stuff is because the rest of the big YouTubers are acting so friendly to her and are covering for this, and so it makes her opinion seem to be the de facto opinion of the left, because the de facto left community, which is the social capital bourgeoisie, and if that's you, then start redistributing, and because if everybody has as many subscribers as you, then that title is not going to make sense, so that's the easy way to get rid of it. But if we're living under capitalism, having a lot of capital is always going to make you a bourgeoisie. And the thing that really hurts me personally is that I'm really screwed financially. But then you hear of the numbers that Contrapoints are supposedly making on Patreon, and it's like, I could literally retire off 1 month of her Patreon. I could retire for the rest of my life. And there might be a chance that some of the big channels listen. There might be a chance that they will take this seriously and they couldn't actually change everything. Real community would be like this dedication to get people the attention they deserve. And it wouldn't just be like, hey, I'll give you a shout out and you'll get like some exposure and then I've done my duty. It would be like, no, let's work together. Like, you and me are comrades, and I'm not going to become a social capitalist bourgeoisie without you. We're all going together. We're going to collab. We're going to promote each other constantly until we can both get up there. And like, if people don't want to do that with me, that's fine. I'll still be trying to do it the capitalist way. And if I do get to the top, you can talk to me and you can show me this video and try and make sure I do the things I'm saying that those people should do. And if I don't, call me out and stuff. Like, it's good, do it. So yeah, I'm committed to community building and I'm committed to doing things non-hierarchically. If people don't want to do the whole marketing and individualistic silo growth and promote themselves, if people want to do things in community, that should be an option on the left. We should be able to do things as a team. Even Logan Paul does this better than us. Like, he got a whole bunch of people in his house and they got famous because of his exposure or whatever. Like, I don't know. We need to be better. And part of it is listening to criticism. Part of it is actually showing leftist values. And like, I'm not going to say like people should change what they're doing because of me, but I am going to say why I think changing will be better for everyone, including me. And we can kind of put ourselves on a treadmill and burn ourselves out in the hopes that one day we'll get a viral hit, or one day such and such big YouTuber wants to actually give us the olive branch. That shouldn't be our experience. That's reproducing the way capitalism works. Yeah, so check the description if you want to get more into my ideas about gender. And if you are someone who is a big social capitalist in the breadtube arena, then please reconsider trying to throw gender non-conforming under the bus for speaking out about pain they're feeling. Try to be there for them. Try to repair the damage by lifting their voice, and that's going to mean a lot more calling outs needed. That's going to mean a lot of your audience is going to be offended when you say sorry, but gender isn't binary, and that is something that needs to be called out. And you may lose subscribers from doing that. But the thing is, if we are building a community, then we're going to help you get those back. And the space we have is going to be one that is so much healthier, one that is so much more diverse, and so many more people are going to be able to join because they're not going to feel like they're not welcome there because of the lack of anyone else like them there. So I think we can take this as an opportunity to learn. I think we can see it as a good thing, and I do honestly hope Contrapoints is doing well. People who are in community, people who have expressed the openness to be self-credited, that like, you can call me out, I will take it seriously and listen. That equalizes the power. That when you don't have that accountability and openness, that keeps the power in the negative state, because then the social capitalist isn't humbling themselves and allowing to raise the voice of those calling them out. So hopefully that was interesting, and hopefully someone who has a lot of followers can hear this and adjust their behavior and reach out to people who are gender non-conforming, and really just try and make our community one that accepts people who are gender non-conforming, and one that denounces the binary, and that understands the science, and that understands how it is nonsensical to call a gender or any gender binary even their own. And I think it's way more beautiful, and it's such a more beautiful idea of gender when you understand how complex it can be. And that's why if we just allow it to be self-determined, then we really are going to increase the living conditions of so many people that really don't feel safe anywhere, online or off. They're going to have a chance at being able to interact in society for the first time, if we can actually get society to accept the science here. And that's something worth fighting for. Like, I would love to be able to go out and not get weird looks and feel unsafe. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.